I can't sort of see everyone that's in the chat on my window, so I'm not sure of sort of how sort of deep to go on this. So if you want, I'm going to keep it fairly basic, but if you want more detail, we can get into it. So cool. Let's see what we got in here. Get into this. Awesome. So something else to keep in mind actually before I get into a few of these slides is I think it's important for me to clarify that this is obviously all just one person's opinion. This is I don't sort of I think there's many ways to skin a cat. I think I'm certainly not preaching that this is the only way or the way or that I know all the ways. Far from it. I sort of the way I think about it is that we're all just students on different points in a timeline, and it's just all about sharing knowledge and sharing our thoughts and progressing as a community, I guess, and having an open mind to change and adapt to new approaches. Obviously, skydiving wise, safety is really the number one priority, and certainly from my point of view as a coach, that's definitely the baseline of operation. We always want to have fun and we want everyone to be learning and having a great time, but if everyone gets down and goes home safely, then it's been largely successful in my mind. Excuse me. I think it's important for us to adopt primarily that mindset of a safe jump and a safe weekend of jumping being a great outcome, because I do think we have a bit of a tendency to get a little bit ahead of ourselves in. I might actually just stop this for a second. That's better. We have a little bit of a tendency to get ahead of ourselves in our expectation, and so it's very easy as a beginner coming to the drop zone and wanting to start doing whatever it is, whether it's tracking or anything else for that matter, and whether we've been watching videos or we've seen various bits and pieces, and we see that and we think that that's a realistic starting point, and typically it's probably not a starting point. So I think if we can adjust our expectation, it makes it the progression and the learning much faster. So super important just to keep it simple, and just maintain a more basic expectation. All right, cool. So let me just share that again. So a few of the key success factors that I just jotted down, and obviously the first one is just to be patient, which pretty much just ties into what I just said. That currency is king. To have low expectations, which I know sounds kind of silly and a bit counterintuitive, but it's more just and specific to the beginning and the early learning phase, to recognize like skydiving is such a unique sport in that if we do 10 jumps for a weekend, if we go jumping all weekend, we might do 10 jumps, let's say, might be, I don't know, 45 seconds a jump. So it's whatever it is, 7.5 minutes of free fall. It's very, very little time actually executing the task. If you think about it compared to tennis or basketball or swimming or whatever, where you can do hours and hours, we're doing 7.5 minutes of an activity. So it would not make a lot of sense to expect an outrageous amount from 7.5 minutes. So when we're learning, it's super important, I think, to maintain a really narrow focus and keep those expectations low, and focus on as little as possible each jump. When we're learning, like it might just be focusing on trying to reframe a picture, or, whether it's if it was a grip or if it's just something in terms of your body position, but not having too many priorities on each jump, because we're likely to achieve very little if we do, because we already have so much going on in the back of our heads when we're skydiving. So less is more. And what I really mean by that is it's specific to actual group sizes. I think it's super common for people to want to have like do jumps with lots of people, and obviously that's super fun. But at the beginning, when we're learning, the less we have going on in the sky and the less distraction, for sure, the better. If it's just two ways, really is going to always be the best. If it's just you and someone more experienced that can just lead, and so you don't have to worry about, or you don't have to put so much focus toward where you are in relation to the drop zone, etc., and someone else can sort of lead it, so you can focus on noticing the wind on different parts of your bodies and the visuals and whatever it is that you're trying to get out of that skydive. I think that's always going to be massively beneficial, but I think it's also something that sort of runs counter to the trend. I don't think it's typically, I don't know, everyone wants to jump. We all want to jump with all our mates, and that's heaps of fun. But I think definitely when we want to learn something and cultivate a new skill, definitely less is going to be better. So self-awareness. This is really just referring to acknowledging and being open to the fact that we don't know what we don't know, and that there's normally a lot we don't know. I think whatever I do know is a fraction of what I need to know. And I think the more you learn, the more you realize this to be true. So I think the more experience you get in really anything, you always can reflect backwards and realize that, wow, I knew very little at that point or this point. So being really open to that in the early stages, I think is not supernatural for most people. And I'm sure I've fallen into all these traps, I would say, myself. So I think it's all very, very natural in human nature, but I think from a learning sort of process point of view, it's super beneficial. A narrow focus, I kind of already mentioned in relation to that, just focusing on as little as possible each skydive and recognizing the short nature of it, and keeping it simple in the early. Well, really, I think really for almost always, but definitely at the beginning. And then just to relax and to breathe is more just in recognition, to be patient. 7.5 minutes of skydiving over a weekend is not much. So to be patient, it's there's no rush, you know. And I think it's another super counterintuitive. We always seem to be in a rush, especially when we're excited learning something new and at the beginning. So cool. So I just jotted down a few key topics or points that I think are most relevant when we're beginning to start tracking. And I should actually clarify, when we're talking about tracking, and this is probably self-explanatory, but in case it's not, talking about, it's a horizontal skydive essentially, I guess. So normally if we're on our bellies or even vertical, head up and head down, we're falling in a vertical orientation essentially toward the ground. And when we're tracking or angles, we're moving horizontal relative to the ground. Cool. So yeah, I think the big ones that come to my mind are, first of all, those first few points that we just went through, and then our equipment, which includes jumpsuits. I think is probably a big one that's maybe a little bit still misunderstood, or maybe not. But jumpsuits in that when we're learning, I think about a suit is like a new suit's like a new car. So if we're constantly changing out what we're wearing, we're constantly changing our flying surface. It's not the end of the world, but and over time it's maybe not such a big deal. But basically, as soon as we're changing our flying surface, we change the feeling of our body moving through the wind. And so when we're learning, it's super beneficial and advantageous, I would say, to have just basically always a consistent flying surface. So trying to wear the same suit or the same suit each time you're jumping, rather than changing from casuals to suit and backwards and forwards, because it just makes it so much easier to really get just to really notice the difference in feelings whether on different parts of your body, whether it's your arms, your legs, you know, around your torso or your shoulders. And if you're constantly changing the fabrics and how baggy or tight things are, it gets very hard to get the same sort of feedback when you're flying and to recognize all the different feelings because it's constantly changing. Another big one is definitely just things like our containers. If they're obviously fitted for us, then that's normally good. But the number of containers we see when we're tracking, like I think everyone's probably seen it falling over the shoulder as we're going a little bit faster. Excuse me. Is super common. Even with our riser covers, I've seen lots of brake toggles starting to slide out of the riser keepers. So I think the gear and really taking into account what we're doing and the different impact as a result of the different orientations of flying has on the gear is super important to be mindful of at the beginning. Most of the gear obviously these days is pretty awesome, but I think it's definitely something to obviously always keep top of mind. What else? Can I just move this window? Sorry guys. Exits. All right, cool. Oh, sorry. An aligned approach and mindset. What I mean by this is, I know for all the events we run and whenever I'm flying with people, if there's anyone I haven't flown with before, once we've flown together with anyone, it's normally pretty self-explanatory. Everyone's sort of on the same page. But definitely at the beginning, always try to set everyone up so we are mentally approaching the activity in the same way. So we're sort of thinking about things in the same way and prioritizing the same sorts of things. And so there's a degree of alignment there. And basically the idea of that is, it's obviously it's a stressful environment. You know, psychologically we're super aroused, I would say. And I think at the beginning, we want to just minimize as much of the distractions as possible and be able to keep things as simple and as relaxed as possible. And the best way to do this is to make things predictable. So if we all have the same approach and we're all thinking about things kind of with the same concept in mind, then it removes a lot of the guesswork. So if we see someone, I don't know, we see someone flying towards the group as an example, instead of approaching from the side and then sort of halving the distance from there or zooming around, we can normally tell, okay, cool, maybe they're not fully in control as an example. So it helps us to evaluate the situation when we're actually flying and to be a little bit less guesswork. So I feel like that's just really, it just really helps to minimize risk, I guess, essentially, which is in my mind the sort of the number one thing that we're trying to do is just all a game of risk mitigation. Cool. The rest is really specific to the actual flying piece. So exiting the aircraft, body positions, approaching formations, flying in formation, and break off. Excuse me. I should have also put in there under canopy, but I'll just touch on it anyway. So I'm gonna just get out of this. If I can just get out of this presentation slightly for a sec, and I'll chuck on a couple of videos. So just in relation to exits, when we're thinking about exiting the aircraft when we're tracking, I mean, at the beginning, I think for sure, at the beginning for sure, it's going to be often easiest to exit on our bellies, just like we were doing a flat jump and then kind of squaring off and then going tracking, just because the nature of a tracking exit is so easy to get so much separation and lose visuals on the leader and these sorts of things, which just change the risk profile massively. So I think often at the beginning, I know a lot of the time I'll exit on my belly with absolute beginners that have done very little tracking, or at least tracking exits, just to get a bit of a feel with each other in the sky, rather than exiting the plane being hundreds of feet apart and and getting further away from each other. It's not super ideal. So I thought I'll chuck on a couple of videos just to demonstrate some of this, if I can find them. But essentially for the exits, it's no different to any other, like a belly exit. We're just wanting to exit straight into the relative wind. So our head towards the prop. And really I think about it we don't really want to dive down so much as we get out. We just want to more be horizontal. So we're sort of horizontal with the floor of the plane essentially, and facing forward. That way it gives us, it's really hard to explain all this stuff through a computer and camera and stuff. But from a surface area point of view, if I exit, how am I going to explain this? So if I exit straight, then the surface area is kind of the width of my shoulders, because I'm going this way into the wind. So it's the width of my shoulders. But if I get out of the plane 90 degrees, which is super common, then the surface area of my body is like my head to my toes. So it's naturally going to be way more surface. So it's going to be way slower. And what's super common is because I think we're 40% visual in terms of our senses. So what's super common is, especially when we learn, we're typically starting on our bellies. When we watch the leader go, and if we're exiting, like if we're doing a tracking exit and we exit after the leader, we typically go where we're looking. And so if we look out the plane as they've gone, it looks like they're behind us now and out to the left of the plane. So we naturally jump out sideways, sort of 90 degrees from the door. And it just puts us, normally makes us unstable and puts us miles away from the leader. So all we're really wanting to do is exit straight, shoulders into the wind, head and shoulders into the wind, and just nice and not as stable as possible. But I can show a video. Some videos will be a little bit helpful here. I don't know where we're going to start, but can you guys see that? Oh, hang on, I got to share the screen. Cool. Wow. So you can even see if I go back for a second, you're going to be able to see. So you can see, like if you think about the direction which the plane's going now. So Vinny, the guy with the green helmet, gets out and he's like a little bit sort of diagonal out the door. So it's going to be, if you can think about from his head to his toes in terms of the relative wind, excuse me, he's presenting quite a bit more surface than if it was just his head and shoulders. And then, I don't know if we're going to see, no, we're not going to see the next guy's exit. But the main point of this video is actually to think about where we are in relation to the leader. So if that's me up in front, and right now we can see like the soles of my feet, you can see my BOC, and we're basically a fair bit behind. We're sort of still in the right, we're still above the leader, which is good, but we're a fair bit behind. So this is actually Dave, it's Dave's footage, I think. So I think it's probably more my fault, this exit, than his, but you can see what happens here is being on the camera step. I suppose the two big things about the exit are the timing, and then it's just our orientation to the relative wind. Those are kind of the two big things. And if we're on the camera step, we're going to want to be leaving later, essentially, than the leader. So we can leave anywhere from with the leader, essentially, to with the last diver is how we think about it. And then it's the opposite for the guys outside on their back. I'm not going to sort of go into too much of obviously we could go into back flying and head up and all that sort of stuff, but I'm just going to keep it pretty simple mostly to belly, because that's pretty much where we begin. But I'm happy to answer any questions in relation to other stuff in a bit. And so what we can see though straight away is it just puts us, by leaving with or basically a little bit earlier, it just puts us way behind. And now we have to spend a lot of time actually catching up to get into a position where basically to get towards the head level and where we'd want to be, which I'll actually go through levels and all that sort of thing in a little bit. I'm just going to chuck on a couple more videos. I've got where are we? Cool. So you can even see, whoops, you can even see here, I'll just pause it once. You can see the guys exiting, all exiting with their head and shoulders into wind, and then the person that's just gotten out of the plane now, sort of more diagonal or 90 degrees out the plane. So that's really what I'm referring to in terms of the orientation. This video just really well demonstrates for the guys on the belly. So I'm with the blue shirt on my back, and you can see the belly flyers coming down. When we do exit the aircraft, the line that we sort of take when we go tracking to approach the formation, it's something that takes quite a while to make sense of visually typically, but we always want to be aiming forward of the leader when we're on our bellies. What's super common is, and you can see it in this video in a sec, what's super common is that we basically aim to where the leader is instead of where the leader is going. And so what that means is once we get to where they were, they're now, X amount forward. So we're constantly going to be behind if we follow that line. So we have to actually aim forward of the leader, more trying to get to where they're going. And so what you'll see here is Jeremy that's just come out of the sun that's approaching. He's sort of approaching to behind the formation. And so right now what's happened, he should be way up in front past the Reese, the dude in the red, way past this guy. I wish I could draw on the screen to make it more obvious, but what he's approached a little bit behind. And so now he's got to like really speed up and accelerate so that he doesn't sink out. If this was a beginner as an example, and we don't know how to fly on our back, if it's obviously much more problematic. If he did sink out, he can transition to his back and it's not going to be a massive problem. But when we're learning, it does become super problematic because obviously we can't do that. So you can just see now he sort of sinks out, gets stuck behind, and then he'll have to spend a bunch more time. And there he's just coming into the formation now. And even still where he's at, we'd like to be like another meter or two forward to make life easy for ourselves. So that's that one. I think this is his view. This is his view of that. So a lot of the time, so that was outside footage, and it's kind of hard to make sense of it, of what it's actually going to look like. A lot of this is all getting used to the picture and the visual as we're learning. So this is Jeremy's view, sorry, which makes it normally much more obvious what we're actually looking at. So he gets out, and you can see he's kind of straight away right now. You can see me in the blue. You want to see me basically moving down the screen at this point, which would indicate you're heading in front of me. But what you can see is right now sort of starts aiming behind immediately and gets stuck now in that tricky spot and handles it super well. And like I said, far from a big deal, but it's just a decent example of what I'm talking about in terms of that line that we and where we're sort of trying to aim for when we exit. Whoops. And this would just be an example. Yeah. So this would just be an example of more what we're wanting to see, the visual we're wanting to look at. So we can still go a little bit more forward if this were us. But you can see the difference immediately as a result of the line that he took out of the plane. Cool. Alrighty. So yeah, I think I'll move on from exits for now, but it's a big one, and it's something that takes ages typically. So if you're battling with it, don't worry about it. Be patient, have a laugh about it, and it will improve over time. It's just a tricky thing to make sense of, because habitually we're so visual. We just, it's very hard to override that that instinct to go where you're looking. So you have to really just focus on exiting straight into the wind, as opposed to sort of heading sideways at the plane. Cool. So body positions. I think, yeah, okay. So we could talk all day about this. It's not something we harp on too much when, like, from a coaching point of view. It's something that you can always play with, but we've all got different bodies. We're all going to sort of fly slightly differently. And there's lots of different positions you can fly, and they can all work. So I think most importantly is that we are in the right spots, and obviously something with tracking that's, I should have probably mentioned earlier, is different to kind of formation skydiving, is because we're not typically docking, there's not the same accountability in terms of whether or not we're actually in our slot. So it's very easy for tracking and sort of more dynamic sort of jumps to be very loose and really lacking a level of sort of discipline and structure, because, well, it's easy to think that that's totally cool and that's how it is. But I try to take a little bit more of a disciplined approach and really focus towards having clear objectives as to where we should be flying and why we should be flying there, which we'll touch on a little bit. But just in terms of body positions, I suppose there's kind of two main axes that we're playing on when we're tracking, and it's literally just faster, slower, which I think of as more horizontal, and then steeper and flatter. So the horizontal, if we think faster and slower, it's literally just increasing and decreasing surface area. So if I could, I don't know if you can see me now with this share screen or not, but if I was standing up, I'd literally bring my arms out and my legs out like into a star. That would be like maximum slow. And then if I like tuck them all into a pin, then it would be maximum fast horizontally. So when we're learning, for sure, obviously we want to take it slowly. It's super important to get comfortable speeding up and slowing down. So more a horizontal point of view with our bodies before we start to steepen things up and increase speed, because all that does is basically increase the output of our movements. So if we're not already really well in control of how to turn our bodies and how to speed up and slow down, if we increase the pitch, it's super easy to really zoom around and introduce an unnecessary and really unacceptable level of risk. So the pitch, the steeper and flatter piece, it's always a tricky one to kind of explain, and anyone that's gone through the learning of it will know what I mean. It's like, it's a hard thing to explain to people how to do it, or like how do you go steeper. It's normally the thing that takes a little bit longer to click for people when they're learning. But the way I think about it is kind of like a seesaw. So if you imagine kind of like a triangle in the middle of the seesaw, your head at one end, your feet at the other end, you're kind of wanting to, it's basically changing the center of gravity. So you're leaning forward, and the feeling is kind of as if you're almost falling forward, like if you're playing that trust game with a teammate and they have to fall forward or backwards and you're going to catch them. So it's kind of that feeling of falling a little bit. And what we typically do when we try to figure out how to steepen things up, we fall forward, but we then, with our legs, bring our heels sort of up our bum. And what that does is it's like removing the tail of the aircraft. So if you think about it like the seesaw, if we pitch the aircraft down, we need the active pressure on the legs to maintain balance as we change the sort of pitch of the wing. So again, it's something that takes time to really notice the wind on that part of your leg and to really get comfortable with that. And hence why maintaining a consistent flying surface is super helpful in that respect as well. But that's really it in relation to body position. We could kind of talk about little nuanced things all day long, but those are the sort of the two main, I guess, modalities or axes in which we move. And there's lots of little nuance, but I think I'll leave it at that unless anyone wants me to go into more detail for now. Cool. So approaching formations, flying in formation, and break off. Alrighty. So I probably should have showed this to start with or earlier, but this is just a good image to give you an idea of kind of what we're aiming for when we're tracking or flying, angle flying or whatever. And when I said how I explained that we want to have the same mental approach, it's kind of imagining it as if it was this. So it's not to put pressure on ourselves to put unnecessary pressure on ourselves when we're learning, but it's not like we're always going to nail this and get it perfect, but it's more just like, this is the ideal outcome that we're aiming for. And the simple reason why that is it comes back to a safety one. So you can see basically, so Tame with the white helmet in the middle, we've got it split up and we've got the two axes basically dividing between him. So if you can imagine, there's the belly flies separated by one line and the back flies. And then there's the line sort of basically with the line of flight separating us into 4 quadrants. And so if we all approach it with this sort of a, if we kind of set the jump up so it's going to be like this, it gives us all a clear expectation as to where we should be and where each other should be. So again, it removes any kind of confusion if it's just like, oh, everyone just go wherever. So definitely when we're learning, excuse me 1 second. Definitely when we're learning, obviously we're not going to be doing whatever that 7 or 8 way, but if it's, let's say it's 3 people, well, let's actually just say it was a leader and 2 belly flies, and we can go, okay, cool. One's got the left quadrant, one's got the right quadrant. And so we never want to be flying across the rig of the leader as an example. So there's an imaginary center line, like the same as driving a car. And that basically gives us a whole corner of the sky to play in and to get a feel for what we're doing and sort of clear, just a clear boundary to keep us kind of safe from having collisions. When we talk about levels, it's, I don't know, for everyone that's done a lot of tracking and stuff, it's something that's always sort of harped on about a little bit, but it's literally we're just literally talking about head levels. And so it's kind of relative, I don't know, again, if you guys can see me or not, it's relative the whole way through from if we were flat, and then if we go steeper and steeper and steeper, the head level should sort of stay the same, like we'd be off to the side a little bit if we were flat, but it's something that should be able to move, the pitch should be able to change completely from flat to vertical and the head level maintain. And the reason why this is so important is basically just to avoid collisions. So if it was a little bit flatter, let's say, and the belly flies were behind, sort of more similar to the first video we saw. So they're looking at the BOC and the soles of the feet of the leader, and one of the back flies corks, which means to significantly change the pitch. So from, let's just say they're at a 45-degree angle right now to flat, obviously their vertical speed changes dramatically. And if someone's approaching and then they change their vertical speed like that, it basically it's going to look like they're going at each other, and it can be obviously extremely gnarly. So if we're the biggest one for this is more for the belly flies than the back flies. It's just for some reason super. It's I don't know. It's just unnatural. Or when you're flying on your belly and you're a little bit behind, it feels like it's right and it looks all right, but it takes a little while to realize that you want to be like, whether it's a couple of body lengths more forward, and that you're actually much more in front of the leader and kind of looking back at the horizon, as you can see or imagine these guys would be. I'm going to quickly show another video. Apologies if I'm rambling or if this is boring. If there's anything, like I said, if there's anything you guys would like to direct me to, feel free. But this is basically just a video. I think this was from a year or two ago. So I think I'm leading up in the pink shirt, and then you can see the person on their back with the white helmet. They'd actually changed they were wearing a jumpsuit previous to this jump, and then had gone to like some leggings and changed their clothes for whatever reason. And I'll just hit play and let you see how it goes without the sound. So again, you can see like for this person on their belly, whoever's camera this is, you can see right now, we'd really like to be a good few meters forward. We're going to turn. It makes turns way more difficult as well, especially when we're on the outside like this person is. Whoosh. Party time. Whoops. So that's a classic example that you can see, like right now, the belly flyer, if the belly flyer was, I don't know, however far forward it was and actually on head level, and this person on the back corks in the way they do, they got unstable and they've corked. Right now, we basically consider this a no-fly zone. So we're massively putting ourselves in danger by actually being in this spot. And this is simply why. So yeah, but obviously not to call anyone out or anything like that, but it's just a perfect example of what can happen. And obviously it's not hard to see why it would be suboptimal. Cool. Alrighty. So break off. I think this is most likely self-explanatory, as it's the same as what we do in a belly jump. It's same as really any skydiving. We want to get away from everyone when we break off. The things that are probably specific to tracking are for the belly flyers, well, for everyone actually, really, just super important to clear our airspace before we actually peel away. So really important, 5,000 to 3,500. If we break off at $5,000 to 3.5, and we're going to deploy at 3.5, it's plenty of time to track away and get separation and deploy our parachutes. So it's super important, I think, to really take a bit of a breath and not rush the break off, and to be able to just take a moment to clear airspace on the outside before you actually start peeling away and turning away from the formation. If there was someone that was not supposed to be there that happened to be there, or if there was a camera fly, which is somewhat of a not uncommon occurrence, can be just happen to be on the outside of you. Super important that we clear our airspace before we actually peel away. I think something that is a little bit different to like formation skydiving as an example is because we've got a group and we're actually moving horizontally in a direction. We don't want to, as an example, we don't want to turn around and do a full 180 and go back the other way. So when we break off, it's super important that we never break off more than 90 degrees. And that's basically so that in the event someone was behind us and trying to catch up to the formation, that we're not going to head back towards them and basically create the opportunity of a collision. So yeah, and track fast, but don't rush is more what I just mentioned a second ago. So just to take our time just before we do peel away, and then it's basically just a slow progressive flattening out and fanning off at the same time. Feel like there's something I've forgotten there, but I'll just digress. Cool. So there's just the next couple of slides are just like, what if this and that happen, and then always and never. So probably the most common things when we're learning, we're either sinking out, falling behind, or floating above. For sure, floating above when we're on our bellies is, like I said earlier, super normal and super common. It's also really easy to lose the visual of the leader. And then burbles is also something we probably don't talk enough about, I think, in relation to tracking. So if we do sink out, it's less common that we're going to sink out on our bellies, But that example that I showed you before, when out the door from the exit, you could see if it was Jeremy, if he didn't really speed up and power up when he got a little bit behind, it would have been super easy for him to sink out in that scenario. At which point, if you can't backfly, what we're going to want to do is move out to the side so we can turn our head and get a clear visual of the leader, until the formation basically gets below us, and then we can accelerate forward and reapproach from the side, and then work back towards getting in our slot. Falling behind, I mean, it sounds really simple, but it's a matter of obviously speeding up. But the tricky thing is when we're on our bellies is that we have to obviously see the leader to know where to go. And if we're behind, it means we have to look up, and it really means putting our chin up, which makes it a way slower position to fly in, because it's basically wanting to peel us up into a flatter orientation, as opposed to, which is just way less efficient, and it's going to be harder to get there. So in that respect, you kind of want to try and keep your chin to your chest as much as you can. Looking to the side again is going to be the best thing to try and do. And if you need to move to the side a little bit so you can see a little bit more easily, to speed up and then reapproach the formation. And floating above, it's pretty much what I said earlier. It's just the sort of thing that just takes time and practice to make sense of how to move the body in that way. So if we're floating above, it's the way I think about, and with all of this sort of stuff, this is where if we have a small group, or if it's a one-on-one, which is most ideal, obviously, then if it's a one-on-one, the leader can sort of fly and accommodate us a lot more. And if this is what we're focusing on, if we're focusing on the real fundamental basic stuff, this is probably, if it's consistently the case, we probably should be doing one-on-ones. So I think that's probably something that, I don't know, it's something that we probably don't do enough of, but it's going to give us the best, like, it's going to make it most efficient to remedy whatever we're trying to work on, if we're working with one other flyer that can sort of accommodate us a little bit, as opposed to a group which is not going to be able to. So yeah, if we're floating above, it's just a case of playing around and really experimenting with, what does this do, what does that do, and starting to notice the different outputs of moving your body in certain ways, essentially. And again, if it's just one person, then it's really easy and safe to do that. So that's the most ideal solution. Losing a visual of the leader, again, it's as a result of, really, if we sink out and fall behind and we can't fly on our back. So like I said, moving to the side, and trying to really sort of look up through our visor without sort of looking up so much with our neck. That helps us to maintain speed and hopefully still get a visual. And then in terms of burbles, again, it's something I feel like we probably need to talk about a little bit more here and there, because when they do happen, they can be super dangerous. If people are not in the right spots, if people aren't flying on level and all these sorts of things, and someone gets burbled and sort of basically ejected out of the jump, it can result in gnarly situations. But at the same time, a burble doesn't have to eject you out of a jump. It can be really tricky, because you just basically lose the wind for a moment, it feels like. And so depending on the jump, but typically you just want to fly faster. So I think the same rules apply for really any orientation in this respect, but it's basically to speed up. In that situation, the speed is your friend. So if you slow down and you kind of stop flying, then you're going to get ejected. But if you really just power up and accelerate through it, then it can just be very short-lived, and you can basically avoid much of an issue. Cool. So a few quick ones that always and never. So keep visual of the leader, super obviously important. Break off at break off, and I know it's, again, self-explanatory, but break off is not the time to play around and I don't know what, like, if you're flying with groups and it's an organized sort of situation, really regardless, it's break off is like, go and enjoy flying your parachute. You know, don't muck around, and there should be no, if you're consistently finding you're at a low altitude under canopy, you're just increasing the risk in a way you obviously don't realize, and at some point it's going to be problematic. So I remember Helmy once at Byron, he was I think he has a 2,500 hard deck alarm, and he heard it, and he was really, really angry with himself when he got down, because he really holds himself to account in that respect, because he recognizes the one, it's going to make it harder to get in a good spot for his turn, but it obviously just massively changes the risk profile, and it's something that shouldn't happen. So break off. Be honest about what you can and can't do. So obviously that's relevant to when we're on the ground and talking about things, and just super helpful. And if we're not straight up about this, it just slows everything down. Again, it changes the risk profile and in a really unnecessary and essentially unacceptable way. And it slows the learning down as well. So it's just being really self-aware and open to what we can and can't do, or just straight up about that. And approaching formations from the side and not at the formation. So we always want to approach to the head level, and then the way I would always explain it is approach to the head level and then halve the distance toward the formation. So you halve the distance, take a breath, chill for a moment, and then come and creep back in until you're actually into your slot. And then never fly 180 to the line of flight, which should go without saying, but maybe not. Never break off more than 90 degrees. Never stop flying, and never be afraid to pull off a jump that you're not comfortable with, whether it's for whatever reason, whether it's group size, mix of flyers, type of jump, whatever reason. It's funny, like with its conditions, never be afraid to be like, you know what, I'm just going to sit this one out. It's something that always gets a lot of respect from everyone when someone recognizes their limitations and is comfortable to say, you know, this one's not for me. Cool. I think that's it. I think that's that's pretty much it. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions. I feel like I just talked for ages, so yeah.
Thanks, AK.
Thank you, Jules.
There's lots of good information there. Does anyone have any questions? Oh.
What's up, Dimmer?
Coaches in the States, they used to use the term efficiency to describe how you should approach a formation. They were carefully avoiding the word aggressive for how you should make changes in a skydive. Your experience with that?
Yeah, it's a funny word. Like all these words have so much. They're kind of so loaded, aren't they? So yeah, I don't know. It's. I feel like, excuse me. I feel like it's kind of relative to the person. So some people you really want to temper them and just slow things down a little bit, and others are so timid they almost need to be a little bit more aggressive. But the way I always think about it is it should never be aggressive towards the formation. So it should always be aggressive towards the actual head level. So if we think about the formation, like if you think about it like from the top or the bottom, if we're approaching the formation, we're going at this way, well then, and we're being aggressive, as in we're flying fast and really trying to get there, then obviously it's dangerous. But if we're just trying to go to the actual head level, then there's really little risk. The worst thing that can happen, and assuming if this is what we're learning, it should be a small group or a one-on-one, then the worst thing that happens is we go too far forward, at which point we slow down, put on the brakes a little bit, and it's all good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? Please stay on the line too. I've noticed a couple of people leave, but we're going to be announcing who's won the 20% off an NZ Aerosports canopy at the end. But it'll be right at the end. All questions first.
What's up, Java? I'm just going through the comments now. So I could wear skinny jeans now. I've lost 14 kilos. Nice one, Ben. But we could really, Dimitri, we really want to dock more. Yeah, it's funny. Mason, I don't know anyone that's flown with Mason. Mason loves the sort of like the Abernaughty style, like linking up. And I actually think the docking thing's a funny one. Like we don't do much of it. Well, I don't really do much of it. But it's when we're learning, definitely for a more, I guess, beginner sort of point or whatever, it's a great way to, because when we're at the beginning, we're not so comfortable with the controls, so we're not so sure if we can slow down. If we start to really get close to approaching someone, we're not confident that we can slow down and kind of not fully confident with the controls of the vehicle, you know, in a way. So I feel like getting comfortable high-fiving and stuff like that, so not even like linking, but just touching when we're learning is such a good barrier to move beyond, and to get to, you find a whole new level of comfort once you realize like, oh cool, we can, you know, you can like little bumps and touching and stuff like that when you're tracking it, it's not a problem if you're all moving in the same direction. What's up, Brent? I don't know if you're still around. Hey, man.
Hey, man. I got a quick question for you. Thanks for the great chat. The video's going the wrong way, so you can see my couch, not me, but that's all right.
Nice. All good.
So yeah, thanks for the talk, mate. Really informative. But just a quick question. Obviously, with the APF over the last sort of year or so, there's been a lot of regulation changes with angles and who can lead them and what licenses they need, and just wanted to find out a little bit more about that. Like if there are beginners and they want to get into angles, can they go out by themselves, or do they need to get a crest, or is that on the cards, or what do you think?
Super good question, and you've really put me in it now. So hopefully I know what I'm talking about here. Lucky Jules is there if I need a lifeline. But I think the rules or regulations or whatever's in place is super appropriate. And I know when it came in, there's lots of, you know, basically everyone's just resistant to change. So naturally there's a bit of huffing and puffing and whatever. But when we're tracking, and it's maybe not as bad in Australia because of the load size, but for sure if you go to the States and it's larger aircrafts and there's, you know, there could be 8 or 9 groups on jump run as an example, being able to lead and open in the spots where we say we're going to be and being confident sort of for movement jumps, it's super important. So I think the regulations, don't quote me here, I'd have to double check the op regs specifically, but you have to basically get signed off by your DSO, I'm pretty sure. And there's some sort of a questionnaire that you have to complete. And I can't remember, Jules might be able to clarify if it's drop zone specific or if it's actually from the APF. I think it might be drop zone specific though. And yeah, but you do need to be signed off for that. Yeah. Can you add a bit more color to that, Jules?
Well, Charles is definitely the better man for the job. He's safety and training. I'm sport development, which I just like to create the fun and they make the rules around it. But just having a quick gander, I think a lot of it is drop zone specific, and that's why it's really important to check with your DSO. What it does say is you need a certificate B to do any tracking, and have received a course of instruction that's approved by the CI. And then novices are permitted to take part in solo tracking under direct soup. So yeah, need to get permission from the DSO. And you can, with a Cert B, participate in up to 3-way tracking descents. Again, you need to get your DSO approval. That's it. You just always got to check with the DSO. Like AK mentioned earlier, you know, don't try and do more than you think you can. And if in doubt, you know, always check.
Yeah.
But I think they just put some rules in place because there were some incidents, you know, so, and I think people were just trying to do things without asking, and there were groups getting really close with each other, you know, almost collisions, and it's all just, I mean, the rules are only in place because of incidents that have happened in the past, and we're just trying to make the sky safer. Yeah. If you treat the rules more as a book of guidelines, you know, just try and follow them to be safe.
Yeah, I think the thing you mentioned just a second ago, Jules, about solo tracking. I know anyone like whenever you're organizing loads and whatnot, and someone says I'm going tracking solo, it's always a massive red flag. So if we've got a B license as an example, and you know we're 50 jumps or 70 jumps or whatever, it's going to be so much more value for the, like, just in terms of like the jump ticket, it's going to be so much more valuable to go tracking with someone else, like whether it's exiting on your belly to start with and going tracking. But solo tracking, it actually can be really valuable over time. But when we're learning, it's in like it's more of a personal thing, I guess. But it's definitely, I don't believe, the way to learn, because there's so much to understand and figure out about the way the body's moving in the wind when we're tracking, to have to navigate and to be in the right spot and to take into account the conditions and all these other things. There's so much potential complexity to that I feel like it's really overloading the capacity of someone at 50 jumps. Maybe I'm selling people short, and I certainly don't mean to be, but I think it's I don't think it's super ideal.
Cool. Great questions there. And Jason's just asked, he'd be interested in doing this again with a view more to coaches, which I think is a great idea. I know Melissa Harvey, Mason Corby and myself are working on a Coach the Coach program, just for professional development for coaches to go around the country in our different disciplines and, you know, try and run some seminars just to upskill the coaches if they're keen, or even just go back over the basics, which is what AK's covered today. But how valuable is it? You know, we can never stop learning.
Yeah, it's like learning anything. If you can learn the basics and know the basics well, you'll be super competent. You know, I think like if you want to learn any new skill, if you just learn the basics of it, you'll already be above average typically. So it's just like brilliant basics is definitely a thing.
Cool. Any last questions? We're pretty much up for time.
There's one from Felix about wingsuiting. I believe this actually relates very much to wingsuiting in groups. Pretty much all you have said about flying in formation relates to wingsuiting. What's up, Felix? Are you still around? Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, I'm still there.
Yeah, the wingsuiting. Sorry, go.
Talking over each other. No, it 100% relates to wingsuiting. This is the thing I'm trying to teach my students all the time and trying to get people's heads when they're trying to fly formations at the beginning, is get ahead of the formation. If you're on your belly, get ahead of the formation. And if you're flying on your back, be behind. Like I know what I know it's pretty similar. I've feel my own position for when I'm tracking or when I'm wingsuiting is I want my crotch to be where the guy's head is if I'm on my belly. If I'm on my back, I want my head to be by his feet. You know, I always want to be behind him when I'm on my back. I want to be ahead of him when I'm on my belly, sort of looking back the whole time. It gives you more lift as well. It creates better space as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, man. Like, I think the wingsuiting thing is a super interesting one, and I don't want to.
It's like angles only longer.
What's that?
It's like angles only longer.
Yeah, but also with way more power. Like it's tracking on steroids. So sure. I think it's super relevant, and I'm sure. I mean, I've done maybe less than 10 wingsuit jumps, so I'm not the person to speak to it, but I'm sure many people focus on all these sorts of things. Like I know I've seen a bunch of videos from the US and stuff, and like super nice like wingsuit formation. So I'm sure it's not that it's unknown, but it's the same. I think it's the same thing. The only difference with wingsuiting is probably more like commonly everyone, the orientation's a lot flatter. So
It doesn't have to be, because I've flown
sure.
a lot of wingsuits. I've done wingsuit jumps from 14 grand that lasted 60 seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
So you know, we can take it steep too.
No doubt.
Your surface area just creates a lot. You have to do a hell of a lot less input to create a lot of bigger input. It's the same as angles. It's the same as tracking. The steeper you go, the lesser input creates more of an impact.
Yeah, well, the big thing is as well, like if you think about it, like even if you are flat, it's still totally the same thing. Like nothing changes if it's flat or vertical, because like if you can imagine the two wingsuiters, like if you're back here and you steepen it up, then this person's instantly behind and almost above you. So they're basically
in the bubble.
Yeah,
in the bubble straight away
and in a no-fly zone. So if you're flat, you're obviously going to have to be like a little bit offset to the side. But if you're forward, and then as it goes steeper, you can maintain the head level. So then even if you went through the other way, you can maintain the head level all the way through like every orientation.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's all the same for sure.
100% agree. This 100% applies to wingsuiting too.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the easiest way to, like with all we're at is just a point for people that are following to focus on. So it would just be like, give them a point on your helmet. I want you to be able to see this point. So as an example, on my helmet, it would be the top of my camera mount, which if you're behind, you can't see it. You have to actually get forward and get into the right spot to be able to see the camera mount. So that way it gives people a visual reference as to where they want to be. And so they can know, okay, cool, I can't see it yet. Oh, yep, there it is. I'm in the right spot.
Put a yellow sticker on the top of your camera helmet.
Yeah, whatever works really. But yeah,
whatever works. Yeah. Like we've got a group at Sydney Skydivers that are coming up. There are a lot of newer wingsuiters that are getting in, and they all want to get together and do all these big groups. And when we do them, it's a lot of the times it's all over the place. And me and Ash and Andrew, like we sort of sigh a little bit because we love the enthusiasm, but the fact is they're all just too keen to get too big too quickly. And that happens, I'm sure it happens in tracking groups too. People want to go large so soon, and then they lose so much because everybody's all over the place because they don't know who to focus on. Like we even had in the last jump, second to last jump we did over there. It's like, I said, I'm going to go out on my back and I'm just going to chase the leader on his belly. But because I was on my back, everybody was chasing me and everybody was behind me instead of being ahead of me. And I'm trying to create that culture. Is like, if you're looking back at the leader, you're in the right spot. If you're looking at the leader at his feet, you're in the wrong place. And it's so hard for people to get that around their heads that if they chase him, they're supposed to be ahead of him. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Frustrating.
100%. Yeah, don't be frustrated by it though. It's just like an opportunity to, it's just like, it's not super, like everything you've said, it's super, it's very much human nature for everyone to be in a rush in that way and super excited to be doing it and whatever. So, but that's where having more people in that sort of a jump definitely is not helpful because it's just distractions all around the sky.
We're actually going to break them into little groups now, and we're going to actually take the guys into smaller groups. And like, especially if all three of us are there, we're going to do 3-way groups, and we're going to start building it, and then progress from there, and then so as soon as people got the right picture in their heads, then we can add more people and make it grow. And then I think we can make something really, really special, kick the angled people's asses.
Nice. Well, I hope so, man. I hope so. I think, yeah, I'm keen to explore the Batsuit at some point for sure.
Well, come with us. Come fly any day. I'll jump with you any day of the week, man.
I'd love to, brother. I'd love to. If we can ever leave Victoria, we're in the prison state at the moment, so.
I was going to wrap it up. There is a really good question by Jake. Have you seen that there, AK?
I'm just reading it now. So it just says, thanks, AK. Do you recommend a way to progress with angles at a beginner intermediate level where there isn't coaching events happening as regularly, small groups, 2 ways, visualization, etc.? Yeah, super good question, Jake. So find someone more experienced than you, essentially. My attitude towards like the skydiving journey is literally when you get to the drop zone at the beginning, you sort of form a community with people that are at a similar level. And the best thing to do is to jump with the same people all the time and progress with each other through all the learning. that way you've always got people to jump with and that are at a relevant skill level. So if there's no coaching, I'm sure there'd be some people that can lead jumps for you. And so you don't have to worry about the navigation side of things so much. For sure, don't be blind to it. Obviously, you want to. It's not to be like just hand someone the reins and just blindly follow. You want to make sure you can trust them, obviously, but removing that's super helpful. And so I would just try to jump with the same people or the same person as much as possible. Keep the group sizes small. For sure, jumping as regularly as possible is a big deal. Like it's a huge difference. And again, jumping with different people all the time is a huge difference as well. Like getting to know something like how people exit the plane, whether it's steeper or flatter or faster or slower. There's so much nuance to all of that as well. So not having to worry about it constantly changing when you're learning the basics is super helpful. To be honest, what you mentioned visualization. Like I remember actually like being in a float tank visualizing backflying years ago. So I don't know what the statistic is, but visualizing is, something like 70%. Your brain doesn't basically know the difference between visualization and whether or not you're actually doing it. So it's 70% as effective or something like that. So watching videos and actually visualizing flying is definitely valuable, but there's obviously, it's not going to be, there's no substitute for actually doing it. Hopefully that helps. And try and get to some events if you can as well. There's like aside from lockdown and the whole pandemic situation, there's no shortage of them. So if you can, whether it's get in the car or a plane and get to an event, would be super nice to see you around.
Yeah, speaking of events, we do have some coming up. There's an Angles camp this weekend at Picton. If you're in the New South Wales area, the 5th and 8th, so next week, Tully Tight Ass Boogie up in far north Queensland. August 21 to 23, there's a canopy course at Langhorne Creek. The last weekend in August, there's 4-way for everyone at Toogs, and following by a learning curve camp at Toogs. Have you got any? Oh no, you're in lockdown. I was going to say, what camps have you got going on, AK? But
yeah, we're in planning mode, so we're hoping to be in Maria in October, but it's all up in the air at the moment. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, fingers crossed. Yeah. Also, tomorrow is the last day to register for E-League for any of you who are interested. So far, we've got 10 4-way blast teams. We've got 4 VFS teams. 2 wingsuit acros. So Felix, go and drum up some wingsuiters from Picton. 1 free fly team and 1 canopy formation. So don't delay and register tonight or tomorrow for E-League. You get free entry to the Nationals next year. If you don't know about E-League, it's just a heap of fun. You can do the comp at your own drop zone and just submit the footage. It's that easy. If you can check out the website, look under competitions, or it's on our Facebook page as well. Thanks again, AK. Awesome.
Pleasure, Jules.
Lots of great info there. And thank you all for joining us. Want a bit of a drum roll for the winner for 20% off a NZ Aerosports canopy goes to, are you still here? Matt Duncan.
You.
Hey, Matt.
Thanks, Jules.
Yay. So shoot us your details, Matt. Have an email address in a private message or something, and we'll send that out to you.
Thanks, Jules.
You're welcome. Thanks everyone for coming. What else do I want to say? Oh, so we've decided to go with this monthly thing. Obviously, you guys are all happy that it's a Thursday night. Got any suggestions for what we can talk about in a month's time? Anyone? Don't be shy. Or any guest speakers you might want. If you can't speak now or don't want to say anything now, then shoot me an email or just shoot one to apf@apf.com.au with your ideas. Thanks so much again.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Guys.
And we'll see you all next time. Good
Yeah.
luck. Stay safe.
Legend,
and
bro.
wash your hands.
Later, guys.
Apples.
See ya. Hi, Pauls. Yeah.